Good afternoon, everyone.
Wala sila kapanyaga.
Wala sila ka...
Maayong hapon, everybody.
Ay, dumahina. Liwat. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, that sounds better, ma'am, no?
Yes, definitely better. So ladies and gentlemen, to our dear students under the College of Arts and Sciences and distinguished guests from different organizations under CPUR, to our faculty, staffs, and everybody here right now, welcome to our today's event entitled
The Multistakeholder Forum on the World Bank Report entitled Overcoming Poverty and Inequality in the Philippines, the Past, Present, and Future Prospects.
Yes. So all of the students here, mga memer ni sila partners, Sir
Yes.
Dan. And they have been sharing memes about how to balance their money because everything is just going so high. The
Yes,
commodities-
especially right now on the face-to-face setup, ma'am, no, that we have been so used online without the allowance. And right now, we're going to be having a budgeting sa aton allowance, especially in CPU, we're having a hybrid setup. May online ka earlier, and then you're going to have the face-to-face earlier. So it's going to be hard on everyone to balance their allowance.
Yes, so they are struggling personally. How much more our fellow Filipinos who do not have access to opportunities that we have access to. So today we take that into a larger scale. You will be given information and knowledge that will definitely help you not only as future social workers, future graduates, future government officials, as
Yes,
I have
public-
here in front,
public
our CPUR
officials.
president, yes, but as a contributing community people.
Yes.
Because it is our duty to give service to our fellow Filipinos, and we will be hearing that.
Yes, and to start off our program this afternoon, let's have our preliminaries, our national anthem, and to be followed by our opening prayer to be led by Reverend Francis Neil G. Halandon, the Director for Communication. So may we request everyone to please stand for these two opening numbers.
Let us pray. O Lord our God, we thank you for giving us your grace, because it is by your grace alone that we are here this afternoon. O Lord, we thank you also for your faithfulness, your goodness, and your mercy upon all of us, and especially CPU for the last 117 years. We thank you, O God, that this afternoon we are here present for this event. And we thank you for the partnership of the World Bank together with our university. We ask, O God, for your blessings to be upon us as we listen to a report, and let it be, O God, that we will understand the situation and that we will be challenged to do something about our situation. We entrust everything to you, O God, especially our resource person, and we pray that your presence will be felt in our midst. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Can we request everybody to please settle down? There. Make sure you are comfortable. And before we really proceed with the discussion proper, we have a few reminders for everybody. We have comfort rooms at the back, and if you needed to have bio breaks, please do so in the most quiet way that you could. May alagyan in the middle of the aisles of each chairs. And if you have your phones there, please put it in a silent mode. Yes, thank you so much for taking your phone and putting it in a silent mode. And now that we are done on asking the presence of our Lord Jesus Christ, thank you so much, Pastor Neil Halanduon, our Director of Communications. We will be welcoming our ever-dynamic University President, Dr. Chidoro C. Robles, for his welcome remarks. Can you give a big round of applause, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to thank our guest today, Dr. Nadia Hasini Bilhit, if I pronounce it right, for gracing us today, bringing the report on the fight for elimination of poverty. I will not be with you this afternoon because in a few minutes I'll have to go to the Iloilo Convention Center for the induction ceremony for our nursing graduates that scored 100% in the board exam. We will be listening to the report about what the World Bank has done. But first, I want you to remember that we have not borrowed any money from the World Bank. CPU has been out of debt 5 years after I took over as president. And we believe that if we want prosperity, we should not borrow money just to reach prosperity. We have to make sure that we spend less than what we earn. And I think we will know what the government has done, but in our experience, the government is the last one we want to interfere with our fight against poverty. At CPU, we have a research program its main purpose is to provide livelihood projects for the people in the community to make sure that they become independent of aid from the government. And saying that, I know that your presence here at CPU has been a blessing to the university, and even though during the pandemic our financial situation has improved, even with the negative or positive effect of the pandemic. And we thank our students for their trust and confidence on CPU that it will provide them with the education that they are seeking. And of course, if you're not happy with your teachers, you can always complain. And we will be happy to look into your case, because we want to make sure that you are here to obtain the education that you expect to be of higher quality. So I would like again to thank our honored guests for bringing this forum to us, because then we want to learn more about what has been done or what is being done to minimize poverty in our country. To me, poverty is not about the amount you earn, but it's more about the amount you spend. If you spend more than what you earn, then you are poor, right? And I hope that early on in life we understand that. So thank you very much for your presence this afternoon, and I hope that this is going to be a beneficial experience for you. And thank you again. and may you be attentive to what is going on in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sir Chodoro, for that very welcoming remarks. And now, before we go to the main course for today's video, for today's forum and event, are you guys awake? Are you ready to listen?
Ay, dumihina ako. Kay 1 o'clock dan, ma'am. 1
Tiguro.
o'clock is nap time. So again, are you ready to listen?
Hep hep? Hooray! They are ready, partner. And now to introduce our speaker.
And to introduce our speaker is a senior economist with the East Asia Poverty Global Practice covering Thailand and the Philippines. Prior to that, she worked on poverty in Tanzania, Burundi, Sudan, Gabon, Cameroon, Comoros, and Madagascar. Prior to joining the World Bank, she was a senior program specialist with Canada International Development Research Center. She also taught in many universities, including the University of Toulouse in France and University of Nobel in Tunisia. Her research areas are poverty and inequality, agricultural economics, and applied econometrics. She has published many articles in academic journals, including World Development, the World Bank Economic Review, the European Review of Agricultural Economics, and the Journal of Development Studies. So, Centralians, let's give her a Centralian round of applause. Dr. Nadia Belhaj Hassin.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. I guess there is a video to be played before that, or should we go directly to the presentation? Later? Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say that I am extremely happy to be with you today, and thank you so much for making the time to come and join this presentation. I know that as young people you are interested in other things than listening about inequality and poverty, and but it's really important and shows your commitment, because the future for fighting poverty and reducing it relies on you, because you are the future of the country and the future of the world. Keep that in mind. And all of the jobs I have got in my life, teaching is the best job ever. It's not. No, it's not there. See? Okay, it's back. Sorry about that. So the presentation today will be about the results from a study that we just completed on trying to understand the patterns of poverty and inequality in the Philippines, and then what happened during the COVID crisis, and then what are the prospects for the future. So as a first part, we will start by presenting the progress that has been achieved by the Philippines in terms of reducing poverty and inequality over the past 3 decades. And then what are the structural factors that are contributing to the persistence of inequality in the country, and then how the COVID crisis have affected the patterns of inequality, what is expected in the coming years, and what can policy do to ensure a more inclusive recovery and to ensure also a more shared prosperity. So during the past 30 years, the Philippines managed to reduce the poverty rate from 49% to 16.7%. And during that phase, the Philippines also achieved a remarkable progress in human development. The human development indicator increased by 20%, and the Philippines in 2018 was ranking among the high human development countries. There was also a progress in terms in increasing the living standards of the population. So around 75 million people were living above the $5.5 US per day in terms of purchasing poverty exchange rate. Inequality started to decline, but actually inequality increased during the Asian financial crisis of 97-98, then started a very slow decline in 2000, which accelerated over 2012 to 2018. During that period, the Philippines could reduce its income Gini indicator by over 4 points. And just to give you a perspective on, the importance of this achievement, countries like Netherlands, Finland, and France, who are known by having a relatively low inequality level, took 25 years to reduce their income Gini indicator by 8 to 11 points. However, the COVID crisis may reverse part of these gains, and the recently published poverty numbers for 2021 show that poverty increased for the first time in 30 years to 18.1%. So trying to understand what are the factors that drove the remarkable progress in reducing poverty and later on inequality, we can see that first there has been an expansion of education. There has been also an expansion of access to wage work. There has been an expansion of social assistance programs, access to assets like mobile phones, communication assets overall, and then transportation assets, ownership of motorcycles and cars. And there has been also an improvement in terms of accessing safe sanitation, safe drinking water, and electricity, which overall contributed to the reduction of poverty. When we look at the education pattern, we can see that the share of the workforce that was having elementary education or less more than halved between 1988 and 2020, going down from 52% to 25%. There has been also an expansion of education at the high school level, and there has been an expansion also of education at the post-secondary and some college education, and the rates increased from 8% to 15% during that period. Completion of tertiary education, college education and above, has expanded slowly from 10 to 18%. During also that period, there has been a transition of workers from agriculture to wage work and to work into the industrial sector and into the service sector. Mainly the low-end services like food and accommodation, transportation, wholesale trade, and so on. And this transition was much faster starting from 2000 and particularly from 2012 between the households who are in the bottom poorest quintiles, mainly the two poorest quintiles, which we call the bottom 40, compared to the rest of the population. And all this contributed to the reduction of inequality. When we try to look at the, also there has been an expansion of the coverage of social assistance, and in 2018, 50% of the households who are in the poorest quintile were covered by social assistance, mainly the 4-piece program, and around 35% of all the benefits were going to the poorest quintile. And the progressive nature and the expansion of the coverage of social assistance helped to keep poverty around 10% lower, and more importantly, the depth of poverty around 15% lower, because the social assistance programs are not really meant to take people completely out of poverty, but they are meant to give them a push to get closer to the poverty line. And when we try to look at the components, the income components that contributed to the reduction of poverty, we can see that income from wage work was the most important driver of the reduction in poverty. It contributed to around 54% of the reduction of poverty over 1985 to 2018, and this has increased to 76% during 2012 to 2018. The increased access to social basic services like safe sanitation, safe drinking water and electricity, and the increased access to assets contributed also around 80% to the reduction of inequality. Now, despite all this progress, the Philippines continue to rank among the 15th most unequal countries out of 63 countries with available income Gini indicators, and is second only to Thailand in the East Asia and Pacific region. We can see also large inequalities among the household whose head is employed in agriculture and those whose head is employed in other sectors, and most of those who remained employed in agriculture are unfortunately having a very low education level. And then we can see also that the average per capita income in households whose head have elementary education or less is around 4 times less than those whose head has a college education. When we try to understand what are the main factors that are driving the persistence of inequality, the first factor is the fact that this inequality starts very early in life. It starts even before birth and perpetuates over the whole life cycle of the person. So before birth, we can see very large discrepancies between households in terms of access to antenatal and postnatal skilled care, and these differences are based on the geographic location of the household, on the education level of the mother, and the overall income of the household. And for instance, the access to antenatal care and postnatal care overall is above 90% in the country. However, it drops to 50% in the Baram region. It also drops to 40% when the mother does not have any education. And then these inequalities continue over childhood, where we see large discrepancies in terms of malnutrition indicators like stunting, underweight, and wasting. And we see also large discrepancies in terms of age-appropriate vaccination rates across the families, again based on the geographic location, the income level, and the education of the mother. And for instance, the stunting levels are about 4 times higher among families in the poorest income decile income quantile compared to those who are in the richest decile. When children are in school, we see also large variations. So overall, access to school, particularly at the primary and high school level, is very large in the Philippines. However, we see variations mainly in the enrollment in the age-appropriate grade. So for instance, the children who are in the poorest income decile, only 44% are enrolled in the age-appropriate level at the high school level, compared to 75% for those who are coming from richer families. And when we go to tertiary education and compare for children who are aged 18 or above, we can see that among the poorest decile, only 18% of children are enrolled in tertiary education, compared to 35% in the richest income decile. We can see also that there are large differences differences in terms of spending on the education of the children among rich and poor families. And for instance, rich families spend around 22 times more than poor ones on the education of their children. And all these inequalities perpetuate over the life cycle. So the children who are born into underprivileged families will have less opportunities for productive jobs and for higher income, and then they are less able to invest in the proper education of their children, which leads to perpetuation of the poverty and inequality across generations. And all this affect the capacity of the country in terms of innovation, in terms of increasing productivity and improving competitiveness. The other factors that contribute to the persistence of inequality are the large discrepancies that we see between the geographic regions in terms of access to basic services. So overall, there has been an improvement in some of the remote areas and so on in terms of access to basic services, and the gaps have been closing. So that's why the contribution of spatial inequalities to overall inequalities declined from 20% in 2000 to around 13% in 2018. However, there's still persistence, and we can see that in areas where the poverty rates seem to be lower, there are also better access to hospitals, schools. There are also better access to basic services. So to give you an example, overall in the Philippines, access to safe drinking water, safe sanitation, and electricity are all above 90%. However, in Zamboanga region and in Barm, we still have 16% of households do not have access to electricity, and the rates increase to around 39% in some provinces in Davao. Also in Kar and in Barm, we have 26% of households who are lacking access to safe drinking water. And the most important discrepancies are in terms of access to safe sanitation. So in Barm, we have 51% of households who still lack access to safe sanitation, and this increases to 80% in the provinces of Sulu and of Tawi-Tawi. And we know that lack of access to safe sanitation create also problems of malnutrition and problems of child mortality. When we try to understand what are the persistent gaps that require a lot of attention, we see that gaps in education are the most problematic sources of the persistence of inequality. They contribute around 30% to inequality, and this has not changed since 1985. The problem is that on the one hand, so until high school, education is contributing to the reduction of inequality. When we come to the tertiary education, we can see two major factors that are contributing to the persistence of inequality. On the one hand, tertiary education does not provide the same returns to children or households who are in the richest groups compared to the poorest ones. And this is because either of the large variations in terms of the tertiary education establishment or in terms of the fields of study. So if the student graduates from a university that is not providing the knowledge that is needed by the labor market or engaging in a field that is needed by the labor market, then they will have to take a job that is rewarding less for its level of education compared to someone who went to a more known university or in a field of study that is more needed in the labor market. And this contributes to the persistence of inequality. And we can see also large discrepancies in terms of returns to the high-skilled occupations between the rich and the poor, but these inequalities have been declining over time. And then we can see large gaps in terms of earnings between those who are college graduates and those who are high school graduates or less. So this is what we call the college premium. So how much college graduates overall earn more than those who are high school graduates or less. This premium reached its peak in 2013 when the average wage earnings of a college graduate was about 140% higher than the average earning of a high school graduate. Then it started a slow decline to reach 110% in 2020 and then increased a little bit right after the pandemic. And this premium is much higher among women than among men, and it reached at the peak around 200% and then declines to 140% in 2020. And the large college premium is related to the fact that the supply of college educated workers to the labor market remained slow. It has accelerated only in 2018, and this is because of the entry of young women in the labor market. So if we look at the graphs by cohorts, we can see that the acceleration happened for those who have 0 to 9 years of experience, and it was much higher for women than for men. However, despite this, the gender gaps in the labor market are also contributing to the persistence of inequality. Overall, the Philippines has achieved remarkable progress in terms of ensuring gender equality. In 2021, it ranked first in East Asia, and it ranked 17th globally in terms of ensuring gender equality. The education level of women overall is higher than the education level of men. However, the labor force participation of women remained very low until 2019. It remained below 50%. It means that half of the population, the productive population, was out of the labor market and not contributing to the economy. And we can see that the factors that seem to be contributing to that are family responsibilities and social norms. So when we try to look at the curves of labor force participation over the life cycle for men and women, we can see that after the age of 20, the participation of men pick up by 20 points to reach 96%. However, the participation of women continue to increase slowly to reach its peak at the age of 45. And this is because women seem to delay their entry to the labor market because they wait until they have children and until they build a family. And when we compare the participation rate of women at the peak of the reproductive age of 25 to 29, we can see that married women participate at 42% compared to single women who are at 83%, and men, whether they are married or not, who their participation exceeds 95%. And when they work, women either they go to low-profile, low-paying jobs, or they go to high-profile, high-paying jobs. They go to low-profile jobs out of economic necessities because they cannot afford to stay out of the labor market. Or they go to the high-profile jobs because they have a very high education level. So when we look at the average, and you can see this is advertised in many reports, that the average wage income of women is 5% higher than the average wage income of men. But this hides large discrepancies across the wage distribution. So at the bottom of the wage distribution, the average wage of men is actually 50% higher than the average wage of women. And this is because at that level, women, even if they have equivalent education level than men, they will still go to some less productive jobs and less paying jobs because they offer them the flexibility to take care of their families. And at the top of the distribution, women earn 20% more than men, and this is driven by the fact that the education level in that group is much higher than for women than for men. During the pandemic, middle-income groups suffered the most from the shock. And this is because they are concentrated in sectors that were affected by the mobility restrictions, like accommodation and food, construction, everything that required in-person presence in these jobs affected the income of these families and led to a decline of their incomes. However, we can see that during the pandemic and right after, the labor market has been shifting to less productive jobs. So employment in low-end services, which concentrates the largest part of the vulnerable groups and less educated groups, has been declining, and at the same time, employment in agriculture has been increasing, and self-employment increased while wage employment declined. And these shifts were more concentrated among those with less education than those with higher education. So those with less education shifted immediately to agriculture, shifted immediately to low-skilled occupation because they couldn't afford to stay unemployed. They started progressively returning back to these sectors, but at slower pace than those who are more educated. And most importantly, there has been a shift into less productive jobs among the youth, which may affect the potential productivity and competitiveness of the country. Their employment in wage work declined, their employment in self-employment increased, their employment in agriculture increased during that period. And overall, there has been appearing signs of polarization in the labor market, and these signs we don't know because the period is still a little short. Polarizations are overall long-term trends, so it's hard to really come with a firm conclusion. But overall, we can see that until 2016, the jobs were growing in middle-skilled routine or non-routine occupations. Routine occupations are machine operators and so on, and then non-routine occupations are those like services and sales workers and so on. But then, starting from 2016, in the wage occupations, we can see an increase either in high-skilled or like engineering and professors and so on, or in low-skilled like laborers and so on. Those in the middle-skilled occupations are declining. This is a process that appears when automation is increasing, when digital economy is expanding. So the question now, with the expansion of the digital sectors, what will happen to these occupations? Because if these trends persist, then they will lead to an aggravation of inequality, and particularly in the wage inequality. There has been since 2000 and of 2021, some signs of recovery. So the labor force participation of women increased considerably, and this is due to their increased engagement in home-based work. And there are some signs also that show that probably this recovery may be uneven, and these are still to be investigated because the very recently released statistics about the labor market and economic growth by PSA show that this may not happen. Maybe the recovery will be more inclusive for moving forward, but we are still waiting for the microdata to be able to come with more analysis about this. But so just looking, for example, at the vaccination rates, we see that overall, the majority of the population is vaccinated. The problem is the take of the booster vaccine to strengthen the immunization. So when we conducted the high-frequency first survey in May 2022, 25% only reported being vaccinated with booster, and the rates are around 50% for the richest quintile compared to 12% or less for the poorest quintile. What's really interesting from the recent trends is that in November 2022, the labor force participation of women approached 60%. It has never been seen in 30 years in the Philippines. Unemployment among women first increased but started to be declined, and now it's almost on par with unemployment among men. We can see that use of telecommuting work has been expanding among women, and home-based work has been also expanding among women, way more than among men, and there has been also an increase of engagement of women in online platforms. So all this shows that probably women are increasingly using these platforms for e-commerce activities, and this augurs very well for the participation of women to the labor market, for the labor market activities. However, where we need a little bit more attention is that also engagement in wage work among women is declining, and it's now lower than its pre-pandemic level, and they are increasingly engaged in trade and self-employment activities. That's fine, as soon as they continue to be engaged in the labor market, but we need to identify ways to support these women entrepreneurs in making their work more productive. During the pandemic, the transfers under the Bayanihan Act helped avoid an additional 4 million people into poverty and around 1.4 million children into poverty. And this was a tremendous achievement. However, the transfers were relatively low to fully compensate for the income losses during the pandemic, and that's why poverty increased a little bit during 2021. Now, the question is that these programs now, most are either expired or about to expire. What will happen, particularly for the regions that are still facing a sluggish recovery? Also, remote schooling may have long-lasting effects on human capital development. When we conducted the May survey of 2022, around half of households said that their children learned about 50% of what they would have learned if it was face-to-face learning. And these proportions increased to 68% for poor and rural households. And this is because these households either faced problems in terms of connecting to internet, or faced problems in terms of accessing computers and devices for remote learning, and also because they couldn't supervise the learning of their children. They don't know how to help them understand, the courses and do their homework and so on. So it is estimated that in terms of adjusted learning years, the children lost over a full year, and it's estimated also that this will have long-lasting effect on their potential income. Now, what can policy do to address all these structural problems of inequality? Sometimes it takes a crisis to really realize what's not working well and how we can build back better. So that's an opportunity also to look at the future with a different vision and decide, okay, we need to go to the root causes of these inequalities and address them. And based on the study that we conducted, we came up with 3 potential pillars, and these pillars partly overlap. The first one is really to heal the scars of the pandemic. And among the policies around, in that, first really to promote the uptake of the booster vaccination, because there is no way around than strengthening the immunity of people. The virus is still here and will be living with us for a long time. And then there is an urgent need to support schools to assess the learning losses of the children and try to understand, how the education program can overcome as quickly, as efficiently as possible to overcome these learning losses. And then to strengthen the social protection programs. We know that 50% of the poor are benefiting from the program. Okay, but 50% of the poor are also out of the program. So the idea is how to improve the targeting of the social assistance and how to make it reach those who are most in need in a most effective way. And there are a lot of lessons that could be learned from the quick implementation of the COVID transfers. So there has been digital system for payment. There has been also an expansion of the PhilSys digital ID program. All this helps a very quick identification of the poor, and this helps also to understand how to also make these transfers more effective. Then there is a need to protect those who are working in the informal sector. We're not done yet with shocks. There will be many other shocks, unfortunately. So we need to be prepared to protect these poor without compromising the fiscal space and the fiscal situation of the country. There is a need also now with the disruption of the value chains, with the disruption of the invasion of Ukraine, the increase of food and fuel prices, and so on. There is a need really to protect the poor against this situation and monitor the inflation, which reached its peak at 8% in November 2022. And then there is a need also to contain the debt. I know this, you're not affected by this, and I hope you will never be, but overall the debt level needs to be contained without compromising the recovery. Then the second pillar needs to focus on how to set a stage for a vibrant and inclusive recovery. So first of all, with the move of people to less productive jobs and so on during the pandemic, and particularly the youth, what can be done to bring them back to the more productive jobs? So there are skilling programs like the online training programs that were provided by TESDA. These could be scaled up. These could also be made more accessible to those in remote areas and so on. There is a need also to expand the apprenticeship programs for the youth, because if you show experience on your CV, this increases your chances to be employed. There is a need also to prepare for the changing nature of jobs. Now with the expansion of the digital economy, we were all expecting this to happen. However, the crisis made this future come even more closer. So the question is really how to prepare the workforce not only to take these jobs that are needed by the new and emerging jobs and enterprises, but also prepare the workforce to switch very quickly and adapt. There is a race between education and technology, and between education and changes in the labor market. Unfortunately, the changes in the labor market happen much faster than changes in the education. So how to make the equation now more balanced, and how to help the workforce really to be able to adapt very quickly. And in that, the Philippines has a major advantage to its neighbors in the region, and its youth, its you. So the youth are really able to very quickly learn and switch jobs and adapt to these changes. of course, close the gender gaps in the labor market, and then, identify who are these women entrepreneurs, what type of activities they are doing for e-commerce, how to help them expand their businesses, and use that also to create more jobs. And, of course, the objective is not to push people out of agriculture. The objective is to keep them in agriculture and make them more productive. If no one is working on agriculture, what will we eat? So the question is really how to attract the youthful workforce and educated workforce in the sector, and how really make this workforce more productive. So there is a need also, of course, there is a lot to do, and this is also another area of discussion, but increase the investments in agriculture, try to see how, invest more in cash crops and more productive agricultural production, and most importantly, prepare for the climate change and use climate smart agriculture. And the last pillar is about reducing inequality of opportunity, so improving access to the health sector. Address the malnutrition problem, because even though it's more prevalent among the poor, but it's also widely prevalent in the Philippines and way more than in other countries. And then, for the wage gaps in the labor market, we don't want this gap to close because we are artificially increasing the wage of those at the bottom. What we want is really to understand what are the barriers for people to join tertiary education, and what are the barriers to use this tertiary education to join more productive occupations that reward their education at the right level. So this will require also more analysis, more data, and so on. And then improve access to quality housing, because if you are living in pitiable housing conditions, then this affects the health, this affects the cognitive possibilities, and so on. And then adapt the social protection programs to the increasing cost of living. So there has been, through the Pantawid Act in 2019, a revision of the 4Ps benefits, but there is a need to constantly adapt the benefits to the rising living cost. Thank you so much. Video? Okay, now there is a very nice video that was prepared by Anne and our colleague Sharon, who would have loved to be with us today, but unfortunately she had a family emergency, so hopefully she will meet you another time.
The Philippines made remarkable progress in reducing poverty in the last 30 years. From almost 50% in 1985, poverty rate fell by 2/3 at close to 17% in 2018. But income inequality only recently declined and is still high, one of the highest in East Asia. The wealthiest 1% of earners own 17% of national income, while those in the bottom half get only 14%. This inequality starts early in life, from the mother's health during pregnancy to the child's immunization and nutrition, and later to child schooling. All these affects access to jobs and income later in life, and if inequality persists, it could be passed on to the next generation. While daunting, inequality in the Philippines shows much room for transformation. With the COVID-19 pandemic worsening inequality, healing pandemic scars will mean strengthening social assistance, getting more Filipinos receive their booster shots, and supporting schools in their learning recovery programs. Healing also means unemployment insurance and taming inflation. There is opportunity in setting the stage for vibrant recovery by reskilling workers, promoting entrepreneurship, and raising agricultural productivity. Promoting greater equality of opportunity entails increased access to quality education, better healthcare, and housing. Breaking the cycle of inequality will help Filipinos reach their full potentials. Inequality can be overcome.
Ladies and gentlemen from World Bank, can we give a big round of applause to our speaker again? Alright. So, puno kag busog sila sa information about poverty and the ways on how to overcome it. And our wonderful speaker mentioned the beauty, the importance of education and health, because it's basically the only way that we could battle this poverty, especially for families who have been in the cycle of poverty from generations to generations.
Yes, ma'am, very important. One of the very important lessons that I have learned as a student right now, that inequality starts before childbirth. So before you're even born, there's already inequality, because in the antenatal and postnatal care of the mother's education and such, and it goes on, especially this pandemic, the relearning process that we've had, the learning loss that we've had during the online setup. I believe that we have witnessed it, especially on elementary students and high school students who are just graduating and were not able to learn, for example, basics in reading and writing, because we are experiencing inequality, especially at home, when our parents does not know how to mitigate the learning process that we have. So at this point, we are going to be having our open forum. So I hope that you have prepared your questions, because the report of our speaker is very insightful in opening our eyes in the inequality that we have here in the country. So,
and just a disclaimer, there is no right or wrong question or answer. If you have any curious questions, you could definitely do that. But reminder that if you want to use the microphone, please state your affiliation first, like your college, your course, your name, and then your question. If you want to speak it in Hiligaynon, that's fine. We could translate for you. But if you are too shy to speak because of any personal reasons, you could go here, you could write it, you could pass it to our faculty members, our staff members who are here. Yes, you could definitely do that.
yeah, so
Because if you won't, we'll be going around
yes, and
we'll be
asking
asking you
questions.
questions instead.
So if you have any questions, just approach our mic.
Maybe we'll have to request one representative per...
Yes, per organization.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, let's take advantage. Let's take advantage of the expertise of our speaker right now, to ask.
And mind you, those are not estimates, those are results of research, years and years of getting data from our country, comparing it, and now you have these things. And if you get employed later on any welfare institution, social workers or not, these are the things that we have to battle with.
So I believe, ma'am, World Bank has provided a prize for the first three who are going to be asking questions.
Anyone?
Just come to okay, I'll come there, sa likod. Okay, so first is, you need to state your name, your college, or your course and college, and your question.
Hi, my name is Zyle Estashan. I'm a major in IT, Information Technology, and I'm a first year. And my question is about, in regards to automation, we know that there is a possibility that the automation of agriculture can take away agricultural jobs, but also it can create jobs for developers and people who want to invent robots to do these sorts of things. So my question is, will the total result of jobs be lessened or increased? Because I know we're going to lose some, but we're also going to create jobs with automation, right?
Yes, thank you so much. That's you should receive 2 prizes actually for this. You know that this is the big question mark on which many researchers are trying to work and try to understand. And there are actually big programs in the US to try to see also how to make technology serve the creation of jobs instead of taking out the jobs. So actually, this is your job to do it, part of it. But it's perfectly possible to really think about, you know, how this automation will attract more skilled jobs and create opportunities for more skilled jobs and make the education system adjust to provide this. Because the gap will happen if the education system is not able to provide these skills. So this is where either unemployment of other fields will increase or job opportunities will start declining, because if the enterprises are not able to find the right workforce that they need to develop this technology further, either they will die or move elsewhere. So that's the big question and the big challenge moving forward. But that's, still an open question mark, and still something that your generation need to really investigate more in depth.
Thank you so much, Dr. Haseen and Zyle.
All right, and for everybody's benefit, the question is, kung magsige daw develop ang technology that instead of us doing the farming ourselves, the technological advancement on farming, will it produce more jobs or madulaan kita job on the agricultural sector? And our speaker said that it is for your generation to answer that one, and instead of losing jobs in agriculture, you could actually be the skilled worker to
create more jobs.
Yes, invent those machines that could help us in agriculture. So bisan hindi na kita mag-hands-on on farming, we could still do the job in making those machines and other automations. Clear? All right.
Okay, so who has a question? Sino pa? Okay, there is someone at the back. I'll come there.
Again, please state your affiliation, then the question after.
Okay, so hello, good afternoon everyone, and to our speakers. I am from the Reform Organization, and I pose a rather controversial, if not pivotal question. So I'm sure that all of us in this room are very active youth, and we have undergone seminars, same like this, to talk about inequality here in the Philippines. My question goes this way. Has it ever been a point of curiosity for the World Bank as to why is it that the Philippine youth has received numerous seminars like this, but inequality is still happening here in the Philippines? And do you believe that the government plays a pivotal role in order for a country to be able to alleviate from the inequality that we are experiencing here in the Philippines?
Thank you so much. Well, actually, this is also another very challenging question, and this also makes us try to think more about how we can do better in our job. So thank you so much for this question. Now, look, the inequality will be, it's happening, and you can see it's declining, but it's part of the development process, unfortunately. So the more you develop, the more there will be people who are able to adjust very fast and take gains of the prosperity that is happening, and others will stay behind for several reasons. One of them is the fact that they were born in conditions that did not allow them to take advantage of this. So there are still youth in that situation. Now, how to divide the roles? The government cannot address everything. The government role is basically to prepare the ground for the private sector to help, and for also the other organizations within the country, whether they are private or public, to help. But the government role is really to focus on how to design social protection programs for those who will never be able to join the labor market, or who will never be able to take on some productive jobs, or because for several reasons. It could be age, it could be disability, it could be other things. And the government role is also to prepare the ground for the private sector to thrive, and then to use part of its benefits to redistribute it to the rest of the population. So there is a kind of partnership and collaboration that should exist, but it has never been able, or it has never been also even beneficial for a country to have the government handle such a big burden.
So thank you, Fred. Do you have a follow-up, as you have said?
Yes, I have a follow-up question from another member of my organization. As per your answer, ma'am, there should be a partnership between the government and the youth, and the government with its people, rather. So, if there is something that the Philippine government is doing, for you, ma'am, what would be the action that the Philippine government is specifically doing? Because we have seen that there is a rise in inflation rates, and there is no possible solution that is being offered by the government now.
So the good thing is that really the government, because from the discussions we are having, you know that the government is preparing the Philippine Development Plan, which was released and launched last week. And there is really a very strong will to address inequality, and there is a very strong will to really promote, inclusion, share prosperity, enhance growth, but making way more inclusive than it was in the past. So the will is there. Now, the challenge is that the government is also dealing with the recovery from the crisis. And for example, the fiscal deficit is very high, so the government budget for now is a little bit, facing difficulties in terms of promoting and increasing the spending. We were asked to do more studies on how the reallocations could happen. So we have a social protection team in the World Bank who is working with the government, and particularly DSW, to try to see how to make the targeting of social assistance. We don't necessarily need to increase the overall envelope, and really but to look at the population groups that are most affected by this rising inflation, and to increase the social assistance for them. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who already graduated out of poverty, and then they can ensure self-sufficiency, so probably take out the assistance from them and help those who are at the poorest. It's really a difficult question, because everybody, I know there is a lot of discussions around subsidies and so on. So there are pros and cons for the subsidies, because it serves also a big group of the population that do not need it. So the question is really how to make, if we are not subsidizing, then how to make the assistance better target to those who need it. And the question is that how to identify as quickly as possible those who are affected. So put yourself in this room and try to identify those who need help. So you need to find a very effective way of doing it. And this is what we are trying to do now, but it's not only us, there are other development partners who are working with the government, and there is a very strong engagement in that regard.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hassin, and also thank you so much, Freda.
Thank you again. I think our speaker is talking about the conditional cash transfer of 4Ps or the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program. There have been re-evaluation partner. There have been a lot of graduates, and right now they're trying to enroll again
Yes,
for
new-
those who really need it. Yeah.
Yes, we needed to tighten for a piece so that we could give and identify those who really need the assistance.
And
So,
I agree that there is no perfect social protection program or any other project, but again, we are not trying to diminish poverty. We're just trying to alleviate it.
alleviate it and set everyone on an equal opportunity path.
Yes, social justice.
Yes.
Louder. All right, we have one more question. Anyone? Sir Ernie.
Sir Ernie, our chairperson for
Yes.
this committee. Okay, there's already a microphone.
Can I give him a big round of applause, please?
Afternoon, Dr. Nadia. Our also students who are here this afternoon, no? And likewise the members of the CSO. Thank you, Dr. Nadia, for this insightful report. No, I know that this is the time is very short, very brief for you. No, this is I think several days of lecture if we piece this together. We have what we call an information overload. Is that correct, guys? Information overload. No, it will take us a little bit more time perhaps to process this. No, but before I proceed with my clarification, no, I'd like to welcome members of the civil society organizations who are here with us this afternoon. We have invited them to join us. I'd like to recognize the manager and former chairperson of Pavia Entrepreneurs Multipurpose Cooperative. There. Ma'am Joy Palmada, no? She's leading many women there in her community in Pavia, no? And likewise, another representative from Pavia, Iloilo, jeepney owners and drivers, transport cooperative, Elma Saison. Yeah. You see, these leaders are women, if you notice, and they're also leading women. No? It's good that Dr. Nadia mentioned about the participation of women in the labor sector, and it is increasing. And likewise, Maria Crista Heberola, si Ma'am Crista from Provincial Planning and Development Office. Ma'am, thank you for coming. And finally, we have also a representative, one of our colleagues in the College of Theology, Professor Reverend Rodmar Bililia, representing Pavia Water Service Cooperative. We probably have invited more, but I know that just looking at the crowd this afternoon, no? This hall could only accommodate this much. Now, to my question, Ma'am, no, I'd like to ask, because you mentioned at the very start of this discussion, no, about the factors perpetuating inequality. I'd like to assume that inequality and poverty are really twins, right? You happen to be poor, you experience inequality. Access to all things, definitely. Now, the question, it seems that you said that inequality begins even before birth, right? Okay? Yeah, no? And goes on into childhood and school. Okay? And also mention about the structural conditions that contribute to the perpetuation of these conditions from or even before birth, no? Yeah. We are interested in the study that you mentioned, no? Regarding actually the conditions, of course, no? You did not mention anything about population. You did not mention anything in that study. I hope it was mentioned also, no? Because it seems that no one is completely free, no, from this condition. Yeah, meaning that to be poor and to remain poor maybe is not a choice. And when you happen to be born in a poor family, is that? No? Yeah, because it's here, no? Before birth, no? Yeah. Or is it because um, of the decisions of people who enter married life without perhaps thinking of the consequences. And that created the condition of inequality, rather than the structural causes that are already here. So I would like to dwell on that now, on choice.
Thank you so much. So first of all, this is the result of a report. I think the link to the report has been provided to you. So unfortunately, there are also other information that we couldn't present because the time is relatively short, and we hope also that we will have other roundtable discussions, to tackle different subjects. Now, poverty and inequality are interrelated, and actually, so you can have a situation where you have zero inequality, but still everybody is poor, and this is not what we want. So we want less inequality and less poverty and higher growth at the same time. And this is where the combination becomes a little bit difficult to handle, because sometimes when growth accelerates and development accelerates, it comes at the cost of increasing inequality. And this is when we need to put all the foundations for making this growth to be more inclusive and ensuring that it benefits everybody, and particularly those who are at the bottom. Now, when we look at the demographic profile of those who are at the bottom, so it's a vicious circle. Actually, they are trapped in a situation where, because they are poor, they don't have other investment than making more children, because they need more children as a way of labor to help them. Because they don't have social insurance and they don't have pension, then this is their also insurance when they get older to provide for them. But at the same time, and this is also an insurance against child mortality. So when I was in Egypt, and this is worldwide, it's not in the Philippines.
Yes.
I was in Egypt and I was with a taxi man who was obviously very poor, and I asked him how many children he has. I have 15. I said, why 15? He said, because I had to factor with the fact that maybe half of them will die. So
Yes, that's correct.
yeah, and this also creates a situation where probably half of them will die because he won't be able to provide for these 15 children, and he won't to provide also not only him but also the healthcare system cannot handle this big thing. So this is where the situation becomes really difficult. So what comes first, the egg or the chicken?
Precisely, ma'am. No, I was reading a report also alongside this from a source here in the net. No, about India. No, India is one of the largest, or in fact, the largest democracy in the world. No, it's a rich country, but it is an anomaly because it has also many poor people around. No, one of the highest Gini coefficient in the world. Although, mama, it has improved about 12 notches up, I should say. But taking from the lesson of India, you have also a growing population, right? Like the Philippine population also. Yeah, it seems that we can draw lessons from both countries, right? Although we have tried, controlling population growth in this country, would you agree with me that we can solve the problem of inequality if we first address the problem of poverty?
Of course. I mean, actually, we are trying to address also inequality in order to accelerate the reduction of poverty, because otherwise we are stuck in a situation where, poverty will be persistent and inequality will be persistent. Or at least if it's not even very persistent, we will still have very poor. The gap will keep increasing. I mean, you will have a branch of the society that will completely be excluded from the growth. And you don't go very far to also developing countries. Look at developed countries. Look at the US. They have one of the highest income Gini coefficients in the world. It's above 65%. And this is also because they have very high and strong structural inequalities that they have never been able to address properly. So that's why even when they reduce poverty, they still are totally unable. You have a portion overall the poverty rate may not seem to be very high. But those who are in poverty are very deep in poverty. They live in conditions that you have no idea. It's terrible conditions. So this is where the situation can happen. You have a strand of the population that is probably not a very big share living in poverty, but they are very deep in poverty and they are very hard to take out of this poverty. So yes, I totally agree with you. We address poverty first. That's the main objective. But if we don't address inequality, we will never be able to address poverty properly.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you so much, Dr. Hasina. So that is a very insightful answer. So I believe we have a question from the crowd.
Yes, and I am reminding those CSOs who haven't registered to please do so. We have our registration at the back. And we have one question from the crowd, Miss Nadia. This is from Miss Rodelyn T. Malones. So from the Association of Concerned Citizens of San Dionisio. That's ma'am right there. Her question is, have you considered promoting investment or entrepreneurship development as one strategy to reduce inequality opportunity in addition to increase access to quality care, increase equality of opportunity in education, improve access to quality housing, and enhancing social assistance? Basically, out of the four that you have presented on how to battle inequality and poverty, have you considered promoting investments or entrepreneurship development?
Well, entrepreneurship development is the best way to fight poverty and is the best way to provide also jobs for the middle skilled occupations and avoid this trap where we find, division in the society. Either they are in very low profile jobs or very high profile jobs. So that's the best way. This is because it starts with small enterprises and then they grow up and then they provide jobs, and particularly for women, because we can see that women who have, of course, because the health indicators are based on the education level of the mother, but it's also based, if they take into consideration the fact of their involvement into entrepreneurial activities, they will see that there is also a difference. If they are more involved in this type of activities, they will be also first more aware of the importance of taking care of the health of their children, but also they will be more able to fund this, to finance this quality care for their children. So yes, as part of the strategies that are suggested in the report and also deeply discussed with the government are the entrepreneurship, supporting entrepreneurship, creating an environment. And we have, as part of the work we are doing, also partly funded by the Australians, DFAT, is trying to identify the profile of women entrepreneurs. Where are they engaging? What are the barriers they are facing for developing their activities and so on. But this is part of the priorities we are trying to look at. Thank you.
So I think we will be expecting more investments from World Bank.
Yes.
Because I think the Philippines has Sustainable Livelihood Program for skills training, entrepreneurship, basically. Right, and we have one more prize.
One more prize for our next
Can we have
person
one?
to have a question.
The last
okay, there at the
question.
back. Okay, we have two. So, sino ang una? Bayaw? Alima? I think nauna ko siya kita. Sige, I'll go to her first. So please state your name, your course, and your question.
Hello, good afternoon. I am Nanal Hope Kasilao. I am a level 3 nursing student and I am from the Nurses Notes publication as well as from the CPU Teatro Sining at Ibapa. So here's my question, ma'am. So if you were to rate the status of the poverty in the Philippines from 0 to 10, so where are we now?
Look, I worked on Africa, and I was in Burundi, where 70% of the population lives below $1.9 per day, and here in the Philippines, you have less than 17% living below $3.2 per day. So the Philippines is way ahead of many countries where poverty, I would say, like we are around 3. No, I mean 3 if you say 0 is 0 poverty, right? So, yes. But if you are at the top, I would say between 7 and 8.
Okay, so we're not that poor.
Oh, no, definitely not. Very far. I mean, actually, when I was working on Tanzania, Burundi, Madagascar, and so on, a lot of people were saying, we want to learn from the experience of the Philippines. How did they get out of poverty so fast? So you are actually among the aspirational peers for many countries in Africa. Including Tunisia, my country. So,
Okay, so here is my follow-up question, ma'am. So, given that it has been a decades of study, so poverty somehow still exists in the Philippines. So, is there any interventions that has already been done by the World Bank that has already been proven effective?
do you want me to get fired or what?
I think I would say...
I'm supposed to say everything has been effective. No, I'm just joking aside. Yes, there are many programs. I think if I have to mention the 2 most important programs, because the World Bank is very active in the Philippines, and there are, I mean, we have colleagues who are working on infrastructure, we have colleagues who are working on the water sector and agriculture, so all these interventions are beneficial. But honestly, the actions that have real immediate effects are social protection, because the very close work between the government and the World Bank during the pandemic allowed the implementation of the loans and of the programs very quickly to deploy the assistance to the families that were affected by the crisis. So that's the first one. And the second one is what's happening on the education side. So all the investments to expand, because look, you may seem like the Philippines is at a lower income or development level than Thailand, but I can assure you that the educational attainment levels are a little bit higher than in Thailand. So yes, what was done in the education system is also very... But I would say that the World Bank is a partner, but if it's not happening from the leader and from the country, it's not effective. So, because the bank does not come with an action. The bank discusses with the government, and the government takes the action. So this is where it's really, I mean, the credit should go to the policy makers and people who made this happen.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am.
Alright, thank you so much. And that was one way to end our open forum and discussion. I think everybody has learned something.
I think we have another.
one more.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So good afternoon, everyone. I am J. Lord Lampa from AB Political Science and Public Administration first year. And my question, ma'am, since education is one of the big factors in overcoming poverty and inequality, not just here in the Philippines, but also around the world, my question, what can the government do in order for inequality in education to be prevented, since here in our country, those government-funded institutions or those schools who are free are being outnumbered by those people who have capabilities or those people who have financial capabilities in going to other schools. So it results that those less fortunate students are being outnumbered by them. So my question, ma'am, is that what can the government do in order for this inequality and in order for education being also presented to those people who are less fortunate? That is, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope you will get a prize for your question. Look, the start point when you have, low education level is to really strengthen the basic education. Like you start with primary and then you expand to high school and so on. So all these stages have been accomplished, like making education mandatory, making sure that, as much as possible that students are receiving quality education and so on. Where the barriers start to appear in the tertiary education. And the barriers are related to partly also financial issues, either because the families cannot afford to pay for the tuition fees, or because the families cannot afford to keep the child out of the labor market after the age of 17. And I can tell you, it's not only in the Philippines, it's also in the US. Like all my neighbors are frustrated that I'm keeping my children to do a PhD or master degree. They say they should help you, they should pay for whatever, they should work. So if the labor market is demanding young age workers, then it also kind of, prevent children from staying, or students from staying longer in the education system. So we need really to better understand the barriers. So there are initiatives within the government, like for the Commission of Higher Education, to review, for example, the quality of education that is provided. And then there are also initiatives to, enhance the dialogue with the private sector, to see how the private sector also can help in developing the curriculums, in also providing the right metrics to evaluate the quality of education establishments, and also to contribute to funding the education, because the private sector will be gaining from this. They will have the right skills they will need for the development of their business. So I think where there will be need is, on the one hand, try to have more data, more quality data, to better understand the barriers, so then we can know what kind of policies need to be implemented. But at the same time, we need more also collaboration between education policymakers, particularly in the education system, and between the private sector and overall government, to see, who will do what to be able to address these barriers and really, address these inequalities in the education system, particularly tertiary, because this is where the inequalities are most prevailing.
Do you have a follow-up question? So thank you so much.
Partner, I actually have a question. I just really want to get this out of my curiosity, Ms. Nadia. Considering that the country is in a whole lot of debt, like Philippines, World Bank, it's, I don't know, people keep saying that I haven't had my child yet, but my child is going to have a debt that we have to pay. Is it going to be producing more people in poverty? Like, how is that, like, we are not paying any interest because the money that we borrow is for the social protection program. But wouldn't that be like a cycle for the country, just like how generational cycle exists in family? Like,
well, look, it's never good to have a debt unless the debt is done for, more productive investments, and it will provide bringing more returns than interests. So the question now is really, so this is also why one of the recommendations really to try to control the debt level without compromising the recovery. So sometimes we need the money, and you can see that the most developed economies are also the most indebted ones. And again, we'll go back to the case of the US. So but the question is, what is the acceptable level of debt in order to avoid also the transmission of the problems to the next generation? And I think this is a debate that is a little bit wider than what we have in this room, and it could be part of the ongoing discussion. And hopefully next time we will have also our colleagues from the macro department who are also, have more expertise in this area to be able to answer the question. But yes, let's hope that the debt can be managed in a very effective way.
thank you so much, Ms. Nadia. All right, thank you so much. That was a very fruitful conversation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nadia.
Again, can we give a bigger, louder applause for our speaker, please? Thank you so much. CPU is so happy to have you for the data, the information, because we definitely need it as a human and as a student,
Yes, ma'am.
as the future generation.
Yes, and as a very important viewpoint that I took from the presentation is that married women take a lot of time to go back to the workforce, and only 42% of them. And I believe that in the trend right now of my generation, that we're getting married later on in life. We're going to, I believe that women is going to enjoy more of their single time with themselves and join the workforce. And I believe that motherhood should not stifle women of going in, that if they're going to be at a crossroad, now they're going to choose motherhood and going into the workforce. But the government should take action that this too could be done at the same time, that you could be in the workforce while still being a mother. So that is a very important lesson. And I hope that our audience, our students got that, no? Got that realization. And we should break that barrier. If you're going to get married, you're just going to become a mother. But
Become a
you
wife.
could also become, in the advent of e-commerce, and of the electronic economy. So at this point,
I am thinking of not getting married anymore. I was just joking. All right, anyway. Yes, at this juncture, partner.
yes, at this point, we're going to have a synthesis of what has been. We're going to proceed on the awarding of certificate to our guest speaker. We would like to request the chairperson of the committee on handling this multi-stakeholder forum on World Bank report, Sir Ernie Sakibal, Ma'am Stella Fernandez,
Yes,
the
can
Dean
we
of the
request
College of
you on
Arts and
stage,
Sciences, and Engineer Dimna Ami Castigador to please come up on stage, and also our speaker, Dr. Nadia Balhaj Hassin.
All right, so the certificate reads, Central Philippine University, Haro, Iloilo City, Philippines presents the certificate of recognition to Dr. Nadia Belhaj Hassin for being the resource speaker during the Multi-Stakeholder Forum on the World Bank Report held on February 9, 2023 at the EMC Conference Room, Central Philippine University. Also given this 9th day of February in the year of our Lord 2023 at Haro, Iloilo City, Philippines. Signed, Chidoro C. Robles, President of the University.
Okay, so let's give our speaker a round of applause.
And we are requesting Sir Ernesto Sakibal to stay on stage for the synthesis, sir. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Ma'am Amy.
I'm going to get my notes for this. I usually take down notes because, as you can see and you have heard, Dr. Nadia, it's, so much information to absorb. No? Nonetheless, again, I'd like to thank everyone, no? Especially my students who are here, Pol Sci students. No? Yeah. My students in the course Contemporary World, are they here? Yes. No, and also my co-faculty, and other students from other courses whom we have invited this afternoon to join us, and like our friends from the civil society organizations and government. Well, this is a very short synthesis. This is, absorbing all this information that Dr. Nadia shared with us this afternoon is something. But I'd like to pinpoint, of course, highlights of the presentation this afternoon. Particularly, first, on the trying to reflect on the 30-year effort of the Philippine government beginning perhaps in the 1990s to spur economic development to address the problem of poverty and inequality. And I think we should acknowledge also the efforts of our government as reported by Dr. Nadia, that poverty has been reduced from 49 to 16%, right? This means then that if there are 5 out of 10 Filipinos who are poor, now that number has been reduced to 2, if I'm not mistaken, roughly, 2 out of 10 Filipinos. Is that the right maybe comparison?
Even less. Even less.
Yes, no, or even less, right? No, so this means also that unequal conditions, be it social, political, economic, have somewhat been reduced also. Along this line, there has been a reduction, or sorry, there has been an increase in Human Development Index. As far as the Philippines is concerned, its position has somewhat increased, no? From below median to above median, no, in terms of Human Development Index. Assuming, of course, that, well, all the services of government have reached, no, this is something that most have been problematized by economists and development planners, no, to what extent government programs have trickled down, no, to the poorest of the poor. That's why it's good that you mentioned, that's one of the strategy that we target the poor to assist them. I mean, the government should target the poor and maybe should involve the private sector more in this process, right? So, secondly, it's also good that Dr. Nadia mentioned about the structural conditions, no, affecting human development, poverty and inequality in this country. No? What exactly are these structural conditions? Meaning these are inherent in our society. No? Has been built through centuries of, not maybe just 30 years, I think. No? Perhaps 300 years. No? 300 years of Spanish colonization, and almost 100 years or half a century of American rule. These conditions have been built. No? And it's good to mention that there is a lot of promise in education. Although education has been, criticized, well, in Asia, no? At least the Philippines has been criticized to be lagging behind its Asian neighbors, especially the performance of our students in math and sciences. Is that right? Just recently. Yet the government has been moving forward, like introducing the grade 11, grade 11 and 12 program to improve the competitiveness of our graduates. No? Perhaps to increase, improve secondary education, the quality of secondary education. Well, it has been mentioned also in the open forum. It's been recognized. No? One of our participants mentioned about the education factor, right, as a key, no? Yet, it's good that Dr. Nadia highlighted the role of higher education. No matter, that's the truth is, no matter if you're able to complete elementary and high school education, in the Philippines, no, that does not count. What counts is a completed college degree. You agree? Yeah, that's what's count, no? And oftentimes in this country, we have what you call overqualified people, no, who are employed. Yeah, we have nurses employed as call center agents, no? We have engineering graduates, no, working in some other fields, no? You mentioned, I think this is from your discussion, degree. There seems to be a mismatch, right, between what courses are offered in universities and what does the job market actually need, right? There seems to be the job mismatch here. So the truth is, the Philippines is one of the countries in the world which has a high percentage of, well, brain drain in terms of skilled, educated people. 8 million OFWs working in 40 different countries. I think India also has, no? Right? No? And many other Asian countries also. They're forced, no, because they cannot be absorbed despite their degree. No? And although education should be, as you said, expanded, as is noted in the report. No? And there is also an increase in the participation of women. Yes, although, there's an increase in the participation of women, yet it does not translate directly to women getting productive jobs. Only later in life, after they have, they went through child rearing and care activities. That is sad, no? And if you look at the labor market in this country, the job, notice for job hiring, we only hire women who are single, 23 years of age up to 27, single. So meaning married women, oftentimes, are disqualified, no? Are just simply shut out of job opportunities. So what they get, ma'am, are those jobs that really, just because they needed it. That you mentioned this in this report. Okay? Now, what else did I? Gender gap. I think it's good. Also, no? The gender gaps, no? Although you were suggesting that it should not be closed. Yeah, you were suggesting it should not be closed because it continued to, benefit those below the development ladder. I mean, the employment ladder, right? Yet, I believe that another area here, no, in connection with education, right? Another area that has to be improved, which is a product of a result of the COVID-19, what is the flexible work employment, no? Especially home-based work, which have been, oftentimes women are engaged in this. And I think it has increased the participation of women in the labor sector. I think this is where government should also, as you mentioned in the report, no, should look into later in the future to improve the condition of women. Now, finally, on the area of my notes, no? Yeah. On the area of policy. What can government do? Dr. Nadia suggested, I think, 4 important points here. But I will only focus on one, no? Which perhaps would cover this, no? Setting the stage for inclusive recovery, which I think would include, no? All those efforts by government, no? Those efforts that were quite productive, like the cash transfer program, the K-12 program, no? And also, the efforts also by the social assistance, no? Targeting those sectors, no? I think there is much to be done, no? In terms of in the area of policy, not just heal the scars of the pandemic, build resilience. I think we have to address those structural barriers that have kept us, no, especially women, no, from what we call the poverty trap that you mentioned. No? I am afraid when we discuss about poverty, being born out of poverty, it seems that we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice because we have been built, we found ourselves in this situation already, right? So what can government do? How can government perhaps empower people to change their mindset, no, so that they won't end up in that trap forever, right? I think there's always a way out here, no? But if you look at really this country, the structural conditions in this country, which I think have been somewhat alluded to by Dr. Nadia in the discussion. Our history tells us that ownership of wealth in this country is really skewed. Yeah, only a very few owns, no, so much and control so much, no. So it's really at the heart of if government is serious about maybe eliminating the barriers of poverty and inequality, then these conditions have to be addressed, like ownership of land. Yeah, how can you probably improve the conditions of the farmer when he does not own the land? And how much more the farmer's wife, yeah, who don't get any education at all. We were talking about the price of onions. Onions, yeah, 600 pesos, no, this December, 600 to 700 pesos. Yeah, but we are an agricultural country. We are actually used to produce these products, no? Yeah, I think this is one area, no, that should not be left out to government alone in terms of policy, but government should always extend its hand to empower the private sector, not only the private sector, but cooperatives, no, so that we will not be left at the mercy of middlemen here. I think the last president, the previous president, was talking about self-sufficiency, but there seemed to be no blueprint, no, how to go about it. Oftentimes, the devil is in the details, no, how we go about really carrying out concrete measures to, achieve a level of development, no, where everyone else, no, benefits from this. Yeah. So, Again, thank you very much. No? And I'd like to thank Dr. Nadia and all of you guys for the interactive forum this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sir Sakibal. So habang ni Sir, short lang no, pero damo-damo because the report was very insightful and you're very lucky to have Sir Sakibal as one of your teachers. Actually, Sir Sakibal was supposed to be my teacher in reading and Philippine history in second year, but due to schedule management, it was changed now. So what a thrill to be a political science student. So, ma-chef ko guro ay second sem. But, malantaw-lantaw, gid ko yung sa microscope, ma'am mo. So, at this point,
Hold on. Before that, I would like to invite everybody present here to please like the Facebook page of World Bank Philippines. Again, Facebook page, World Bank Philippines. They are posting their researches there, current trends, current issues, social realities that is not only facing our country, but the world as a whole. So if you want to be equipped with general knowledge, you could definitely follow World Bank PH. Right? And now, to formally close our program, but before that, I'm requesting everyone to not leave the auditorium. We will be having our picture taken.
and I believe snacks will be distributed afterwards.
And now for our closing remarks, let's welcome on stage our ever beautiful, dynamic Dean of College of Arts and Sciences, Dr. Stella G. Fernandez. Ma'am?
Thank you so much for this lively and active participation of our World Bank Forum. So first of all, I would like to thank the presence of Ma'am Stephanie Ann Margalio, the External and Corporate Relations Program Assistant here in the Philippines. Ma'am Ann, okay? And also Ma'am Ami Dimpna Castigador. Ma'am Dimpna, okay, so these two persons are responsible why we have this forum. So since this is a multi-stakeholder, I would like to recognize first the collaborative event happened because of the facilitation of Engineer Dimpna Castigador and also the Center for Local Governance and Indigenous People Studies, coordinated by Ma'am Renia, Dr. Renia de la Peña. Please stand. Okay. The Social Science Department, we have here the faculty members. Please stand. They are offering the program Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Public Administration. Also, the outreach activity of the College of Arts and Sciences. So we have here the representative, Professor Dipol. Okay, please stand. Sarex Dipol, Jr. And also Engineer Levi de los Santos. Sir Levs, okay. The School of Graduate Studies, the Masters of Public Administration, the Review Continuing Education and Consultancy Center by Dr. Lenny Mucho. Ma'am Len, okay. So thank you, and also from the CPU TV channel and the CPUR student government. We have here the president, Mr. Kimba, okay? We have the past, present, and future. So remember, students, that the information that you had heard and intake, you have, that is not a fake news. This is really a comprehensive research report of Dr. Nadia Hassin. Thank you so much for sharing this information for us so that at present these young people would participate, and they are part now in the reducing of poverty and as well as in promoting equality in the community. I would like also to recognize our students from Pol Sci and Public Ad. Okay? Actually, this forum was really intended for you because later on, you will be responsible in the formulation of policies and even in the implementation that would lessen poverty and would promote equality. Also, I would like to recognize the social work students. Okay? The social work, because they are the persons that would work in the community that will promote and facilitate equal rights and give justice with our fellow men. To our youth leaders from the different colleges, this is also your role to address these social issues. As being mentioned a while ago, that since birth, we have been part of that. So the CPU gives you, at present, gives you the best weapon, and that is education. And through this forum, you were enlightened that you have this for future, or even present, signs of recovery and presence of social assistance. So you have a great role. You are being prepared and you have been provided by this knowledge. For the future, a while ago we had an informal talk with Dr. Hassin that she is willing to help us, especially on the future work on researches. So if you are interested to work on these social issues, the World Bank, baka may budget pa, no? There's a budget for the research. So that is for our future opportunities. Okay, my question, do you experience poverty? Yes. How about inequality? Yes. Okay, take this challenge. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent, but things matter. So we have to take an action, we have to participate, and even implement what we had learned. Thank you so much. You will not leave this hall without stomach development. We have been mentally enriched stomach. Thank you so much, World Bank, for this activity.
Thank you so much, Dean Stella. So I believe at this point now we're going to have the picture taking. So we invite all members of the committee, Dr. Hassin and the World Bank, to please come up here on stage. Mama, nang set up ta for picture? Do we take it up front or? Sir, okay, we'll face
the whole, like the whole crowd.
Okay, so we'll face the stage, and then the picture will be picturing all of the crowd. Committee members,
Sir Sarek, Sir Lev, Sir Ernie, let's take a picture. Ma'am. Yeah, Ma'am Ren.
Ma'am Ren.
Picture ta, ma'am.
You are amazing.
Sir, doon sila matapunan. Sila. Steve? please.
I
are
would like to
requesting-
request members of the committee, ma'am. Chi, balik na nay. We'll have a picture on stage, ma'am.
Yes, Miss Nadia, please. Dean.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sige, students, your snacks is still being prepared, so please remain
I believe,
in the
ma'am,
hall.
for those organizations who are present here, I believe you could take a picture with Miss Nadia so that you could post it in your accomplishment reports. So for those organizations who are here, kadto lang din sa may right side of the stage.
It's their opportunity to have a remembrance.
Okay, so for the first organization from CARES. Okay, for CARES. Wait lang, sino? Galing ma-picture. Okay, you have, okay. CARES and then JCF. Okay, so let's just, while we're waiting for the food, for those organizations who are here, the units.
I am also requesting my 40 social students or
The Philippines made remarkable progress in reducing poverty in the last 30 years. From almost 50% in 1985, poverty rate fell by 2/3 at close to 17% in 2018. But income inequality only recently declined and is still high, one of the highest in East Asia. The wealthiest 1% of earners own 17% of national income, while those in the bottom half get only 14%. This inequality starts early in life, from the mother's health during pregnancy to the child's immunization and nutrition, and later to child schooling. All these affects access to jobs and income later in life, and if inequality persists, it could be passed on to the next generation. While daunting, inequality in the Philippines shows much room for transformation. With the COVID-19 pandemic worsening inequality, healing pandemic scars will mean strengthening social assistance, getting more Filipinos receive their booster shots, and supporting schools in their learning recovery programs. Healing also means unemployment insurance and taming inflation. There is opportunity in setting the stage for vibrant recovery by reskilling workers, promoting entrepreneurship, and raising agricultural productivity. Promoting greater equality of opportunity entails increased access to quality education, better healthcare, and housing. Breaking the cycle of inequality will help Filipinos reach their full potentials. Inequality can be overcome.